Kenneth Parks was a very normal man who seemingly turned into a monster for a single night while sleepwalking. He was loved by his family and in-laws. His mother-in-law even had a nickname for him. She called him her gentle giant. Parks had a major gambling problem, which made his situation even worse when he lost his job and put himself in debt up to his eyeballs. With real-world problems eating away at his mind daily, he began to suffer from insomnia. One grim night in 1987, Kenneth fell asleep only to rise and sleepwalk, driving 14 miles to his wife's mom and dad's house, where he slaughtered his mother-in-law and seriously injured his father-in-law with a tire iron and knife. Being the good sleepwalking killer that he was, sarcasm implied, he immediately made his way to the local police station and turned himself in. He was tried in court and found not guilty due to his sleepwalking. Joseph Mitchell, a man suffering from extreme financial hardship and caring for his 3 children, went to bed on September 21st, 2010. The next thing he remembers after going to bed, according to him at least, was waking up inside of Duke University Hospital. The actions that took place between going to bed and waking at the hospital are dark and criminal, to say the least. Joseph Mitchell rose from his bed supposedly in a state of sleepwalking and killed his 4-year-old son and attempted to kill his other 2 children as well. The only thing that stopped him were the 2 remaining children fighting him off. He was found by police locked in his office, attempting to take his own life by stabbing himself. Joseph's attorneys put forth a sleepwalking defense in his trial, leading to a not guilty verdict. The creepiest part about it? He donned a Halloween mask during his homicidal sleepwalking adventure. Ivy Cogden suffered from nightmares that were often so bad she believed them. The 50-year-old mother from the Melbourne suburb of Carnegie was prone to nervous complaints, as anxiety and associated psychological conditions were referred to in the earlier half of last century, and she was under the care of several doctors. On the night of August 11th, 1950, her daughter, Patricia, had told her mother that it was possible that she could be assigned as a transport driver if the Koreans attacked Australia. That night, Mrs. Cogden's night terrors were so real to her that she did the unthinkable. Her only child was asleep when Mrs. Cogden entered the room with an axe in hand and smashed her daughter's skull, thinking she was a Korean soldier carrying out an attack. Poor Patricia was found in the early hours of the morning, dead in her bed, with the blood-stained axe near her body. Mrs. Cogden pleaded not guilty to her daughter's murder. Her defense was that she was sleepwalking at the time she killed Patricia and believed she was protecting her girl from Korean soldiers who had invaded their suburban home. Her complex neurosis included severe nightmares that were disclosed to the doctors who were treating her condition. According to medical experts who assessed her, Miss Cogden was a hysterical type who could suffer blackouts and was prone to sleepwalk. Miss Cogden was found not guilty in the murder of her daughter. The case made legal history in Australia because it was the first time a person accused of murder had successfully used sleepwalking as a defense. Robert LEDRU was called to Normandy from Paris to put his best in the business detective skills to the test on a local case. He arrived in Normandy the night before to get some early sleep to be ready for the next day, his revolver neatly placed under his pillow. He awoke the next morning and hurried to the local police station to help with the case he had been contacted for. When he arrived, he was quickly informed that there was a new case of supreme importance and that the other cases would have to wait. The body of a Parisian dress shop owner had been found on the beach that morning, and they needed LEDRU's help to solve the case. He began his investigation and noticed something odd. The footprints in the sand were missing the big toe on the right foot. LEDRU himself was also missing the same big toe. With a feeling of shock, it was then that a memory flooded back to him from that morning. He awoke to find his socks were somehow wet. It was in that moment that he knew what had happened. Completely horrified, he returned to the local police and told them he had been the person responsible and that he had done it in his sleep. To prove this was done in his sleep, LEDRU was given a series of tests by law enforcement. He was forced to sleep in a jail cell overnight with a gun and blanks while under observation. LEDRU rose around midnight from his bed, still asleep, and fired the gun at point-blank range at one of his guards. This was enough to convince the authorities of his story, even though it was unheard of at the time. From then until his death in 1937, LEDRU was secluded on a farm outside Paris, overseen by doctors and armed guards who sometimes would tell the true-life story of the detective who solved the crime he unknowingly committed. Albert TIRRELL's case was the first time in American history that sleepwalking was used successfully as a defense in a murder case. TIRRELL had been seeing a woman on the side named Maria Bickford, a local prostitute who lived and worked at a brothel. TIRRELL and Bickford were both well off and from wealthy families. One morning, TIRRELL decided to visit the brothel where Bickford worked. All sorts of commotion could be heard coming from her room after his arrival. After the noises had calmed down, fires were spotted in multiple locations around the property, as if it was an attempt to burn down the building. When it had been decided to see what all the commotion had been about in Bickford's room, she was found with her neck cut and her head nearly decapitated. It was automatically assumed TIRRELL was responsible, as he was the last one in the room. However, TIRRELL's lawyer argued that he was known for sleepwalking, and that it was highly likely the murder had been committed under such circumstances. He walked away a free man, and all charges were dropped.